Welcome, everybody, for another edition of the Kenny and Renny post-game show. Going to be a good one. It's a Jets victory post-game show. It's a headband post-game show. We got it all here tonight. I figured, Kenny, because we've been battling it out on the pregame show and the post-game show over the lines time and time again, I figured this game is just going to set us up for some headbanging right here. So I thought I'd soften the blow with the old headband. I figure we'll be sweating it out all night here because – well, you know our audience. They don't like to go to bed, so we got to stay up and keep them entertained. So to start off, let's just get right into it. Give me an idea of your takeaway from that game.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that the folks are fired up as usual about the high shot volume, but I mean, that is certainly a concern to a degree. But again, this is a high shot volume team, and the high danger chances at even strength were 9-8 for Montreal. I don't think it was the Jets' best effort by any stretch. I think the second period was incredibly flat for the Jets, and Paul Maurice did touch on that. And after that, they obviously had a great start with the goal 18 seconds in. I mean, what a shot by Morrissey. I mean, that back angle. Mm-hmm. Jake Allen has zero chance of stopping that puck. The Jets give one up shortly thereafter. I think there was a lot of overcommitment on the play. I mean, Logan Stanley, I think, got caught a little bit to the side. You know, Pionk had already covered the puck carrier, and then the Jets were just a little bit late coming back. And yeah, it is back. Exactly. It's back. The Jets had a solid third, I thought. They didn't sit back the way that they have at certain occasions. And I should mention to many of our good friends on the commenting section, after a second period where Mark Scheifele wasn't great defensively, he made a very smart play along the boards to get the empty net assist. So yes, I understand people will say, yes, it's another empty net, empty calories point. He actually made quite a smart play defensively along the boards to get the seal, to get the puck to Kyle Connor, and that allowed Andrew Kopp to get the goal. So I think, too, Paul Maurice made it quite clear that when Andrew Kopp came onto that line got better defensively, and that was not an accident. In terms of the other stuff...
That was the design, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what we had talked about on the pregame show, Sean. That was the next move, and the next move just probably happened maybe a little bit earlier than we thought, but, I mean... I texted you in the first period right before the Ehlers goal, and what did I say? I said,
yeah, you said that line wasn't going.
Make the change right now. They had some issues there defensively for sure. Overall, though, I mean, again, the Jets just moved 8 points up on Montreal. So, I mean, did they play a great game? I don't think they played great, but considering they were without their captain and considering they had, probably a second period where their legs weren't there and they gave up a lot of opportunities, they got the job done. I mean, I don't think it was a terrible game. I don't think it was a great game. It was kind of somewhere in the middle.
All right. I hate that sentiment. I hate that we got the job done sentiment that has popped up during games in which the Jets probably deserved a worse fate that's come time and time again this season. And I'll tell you why, Ken. I've thought that's been a sentiment that the Jets will have used over the years. They're that team that likes to see the rosiness, the positivity, and everything that happens. And you don't want to be chewing in on the negative, but you and I have had these conversations before, and we've had it on the road in the playoffs when we've been covering teams that have gone deep. And I've thought this for a long time. Like, really good teams aren't afraid to call themselves out when they aren't playing that well. And Paul Maurice, to his credit, has been doing that this year. To your point, Paul Maurice said they were flat. It was a flat game. I didn't like our second period. I'm not sure he could have liked their third period that much either. But this is a team that played one game in the last 5 days. What is important this year is rest. This is a team, one game the last 5 days, 2 days off, and the Montreal Canadiens play back-to-back. And the Montreal Canadiens are the better team in the second and third period when you're supposed to have the legs. Now, I'm saying this right now. We can say everything we want about shot selection, and the Jets will try and tell you that the shots were from the outside and it's not a big deal. And so what? They put up close to 40 shots, no big deal. Ask guys who play hockey and have hands. Don't ask me. I'm not one of them. But if you ask guys, when you get tired, what's the first thing that goes, Ken?
Well, hands.
It's your hands.
brain.
Your hands are the first things that go. So you can be tired and you can gut it out with your legs and you can throw your body around and you can work your muscles. But what disappears when you're tired is your hands. If you watch the Canadiens tonight, did you see how many times they struggled taking simple passes from each other? That was a team that was gassed and their hands were gone. And the Jets eked out a 3-2 victory over them based on a hot start that for a tired team, which is what they needed to do. So give the Jets credit there. Give them credit where it's due. They came out and got the start that they felt they needed to have. They got it. They executed it. And it's all they needed in the end to win the game, was those 3 goals. But I don't walk away from that game and I don't take a look at we did what we needed to do. That was a team that they could have and probably should have run it up on tonight. And instead, this is a Jets team that needed to switch and change its lines up against a tired team because they weren't getting enough out of their players on that night. So I don't walk away from the game tonight and think, you know what, we got the job done. Give us credit for getting where we got. Like, the playoffs are right around the corner. Giving yourself that consolation prize and patting yourself on the back for getting 2 points against a team that you were probably going to get 2 points again. You need to start seeing results. You need to start putting this together. And I mean, you can respond to this. I walk away from this game and I don't think this is a reason to be happy. This is a reason to say we need to get to work.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have much of an issue, but I mean, I also would say that for all the times that the Jets have looked slow against Montreal, Montreal wasn't coming in waves against the Jets today, and I think they were,
because they're tired. They're tired. They played last night.
The Jets played plenty of games when they were tired. I mean, that's just the way that it goes. I mean, there were ample opportunities to put the game away. Pierre-Luc Dubois has a great chance in front. They had the Jets had an extended zone shift. If Dubois' shot is on net and doesn't go wide, we're not talking about anything other than a 2-goal win that didn't require an empty net game. I mean, I don't think that the the second period was very flat for the Jets. There's no doubt about that. This happened to the Jets one other time this year where they had an excellent first period and then were very poor in the second and then had to find a way to eke it out late. I don't think, to me, this just wasn't a game where yeah, you're right. Montreal did look tired, but it wasn't one of those games where the Jets were under siege and they had to rely on Hellebuyck for ridiculous saves on high danger chances, and the Jets were hemmed into their own end. I mean, in the third period was even. I mean, it was basically even. So
I don't think so. You don't think Montreal was the more dangerous of those two teams, really?
I mean, for a while, sure, but I mean, they never had that sustained pressure where the Jets were stuck in their own end. They had maybe one bad shift where they got caught in their own end, but to me, I just think that that's just the way that it went. I mean, did the Jets have trouble with the forecheck? I mean, I didn't. I mean, I don't think that they had a ton of trouble. A couple of their lines had trouble breaking out, but that's also part of the reason why the line changes were made. I mean, the line changes weren't made because those guys aren't prolific offensively. The trouble was they were giving up too much on the rush and they were having trouble getting out of their own end. So that's why that line was changed, quite frankly. So, I mean, we knew the line change was coming, so I don't look at a change of the lines, Sean, and saying, "Hey, that was an indictment on how the Jets were." I mean, I think that move was coming around the corner.
You don't think so?
It was a matter of when. It was a matter of it was coming.
The move was
when.
The move was coming, but the move was only going to be made when the team was basically stuck in the mud and not going anywhere, and that's what happened. He responded to it. He said that move happened
too much of one thing on that line, which is
what
had happened.
What did he say? He said that line, the Scheifele line, gave up in Paul Maurice's count. And again, this is why I give Paul Maurice credit. He didn't used to do this. He used to be, the guy who beat the drum on we did enough to get it done tonight. Tonight, he said, I changed that line because Scheifele's line had given up 5 grade A chances. Sure.
Right.
And that's what needed to happen.
That's smart coaching then, right?
But you're saying, oh well, it was coming anyways. No, it was coming. It needed to be done because his feelings are probably going to end up losing the game if that happens.
That line was struggling. Yes, that line was struggling. No doubt about that. I didn't say the Jets played well. That's not what I'm suggesting. That is not their template for success.
No.
Paul Maurice said it, and I'm saying it too.
Yes.
But again,
sing it from the rooftop, Kenny.
Good teams learn how to win games when they don't have their best, Sean. I mean, that's not a poor quality. That
Okay.
is a
No.
that is a quality that teams who want to win have to have that quality, or else that team goes into the game thinking they have to play a perfect game or they can't win. Don't you
Okay.
think?
So yeah, I agree. I agree, but I'm going to
For
counter that.
all of the
And
trouble Montreal has given the Jets, this was not that game.
come back to
Here you go. Jason
respond.
Abraham would
Respond to
say,
this.
"This
Hold
is for
on.
you." There
Respond to
you
this.
go.
Respond to this right away, just quickly, because Video Reddit wants to set you off. Okay, I'm going to counter that. I'm going to counter what you're saying. I agree with that. I'm
No
okay with
problem.
the idea, but I'm also not okay with the idea of constantly being that team who, like, your response to a game isn't, we were firing on all cylinders and we're ramping it up and we've got this figured it out. That's not your response. Your response is, we didn't have our best game again, but we got it done, right? Because when you don't hear that happening is in the playoffs. You don't ever go back in the playoffs and hear a team talking about, we didn't have it tonight, but we got it done. That does not happen. The stakes are higher.
Oh, that's not
that
true.
Disappears.
When
that
people
goes,
win in the playoffs, they don't care because
happen.
they won.
It happens from time to time, but the best team usually wins in the playoffs, correct?
For
we
sure,
talked about it last night. That St. Louis team was a team that inexorably got better as the series went on and won. They didn't win series by saying, we forgot to show up tonight, but we pulled out a victory, right? So here's my counter to all that.
They made their own breaks.
Here's my counter. If you take a look at a team like the Colorado Avalanche right now, would you rather have your team doing what the Colorado Avalanche is doing? Or would you rather have your team showing up on a night, playing a team that's back-to-back and tired, and you've played one game in the last 5 days, and you walk away from that game and you say, we didn't have our best, but we got it done?
Sean,
which of those two teams sounds like the team that's prepping and preparing for the playoff?
Well, what I would also caution on that same front was that 2 years ago, we went and watched the Winnipeg Jets get dominated by a Tampa Bay Lightning team that was clearly the best team in the regular season, and they promptly got swept in the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. So I don't really care that much if a team rattles off 15-game point streaks in March and April if they don't get the silver trophy at the end of the season. And Colorado would be the first team to tell you that they wouldn't care about that at all either. So this is what I'm saying for you, Sean. I'm with you. Do the Jets need to play better if they want to win 2 series? Of course they do. They're not going to win 2 series the way they played tonight, and they're not pretending that was the case. So I think that there's really no... again, the Jets are not making excuses. I mean, they know they didn't play well, but they're not going to apologize. I mean, would the Jets feel better about themselves if they played great and lost 3-2? And Montreal was suddenly 4 points out instead of 8 points out?
Yeah.
Not for me. I mean, I think 2 things can be accurate. The Jets cannot feel great about how they played, but know that they found a way to get the job done when they were playing without their captain for the first time since the end of the 2018 season. And they know they got another solid goaltending performance. What did they have to do to get the job done? They needed a goal from the fourth line. Really smart. I mean, even though Trevor Lewis didn't want to take credit for the goal, that's an absolutely exceptional play made by Trevor Lewis. First of all, to knock Victor Mete's off balance so that his stick was out of position so that he could get the one hand free for the redirection. And again, we talked about Matthew Perreault going into the game and how energized he would be getting a chance to play on that line again. What does he do in the first shift? Makes an outstanding pass through a pair of skates, and then it's a beautiful shot by Morrissey. And one other thing I want to mention, for all the people who have been knocking offensive players' defensive play, how many people on our chat board are yelling at Tyler Toffoli for not being able to catch Nikolai Ehlers? Nobody. You know why? Because he has 20 goals. Yeah. It's not his job to catch it. If he can catch them, great. But I don't see Habs fans on Twitter yelling, saying, oh, well, Tyler Toffoli, poor effort there on the back check. I mean, like we talked about, it's part of the trade-off. I mean, sometimes, again, I'm not saying he was slacking on the play, but sometimes you just can't catch the guy. So you sometimes you're in a chase position and it doesn't work out. I mean, the only goals that beat the Jets, one was off a stanchion, and
Yeah.
one was on an overcommitment. So to me, it's not like the Canadiens rattled off 20 grade A scoring chances in the game. Did Connor Hellebuyck catch a break for a Lehkonen shot off the crossbar and a Tyler Toffoli shot that went off the iron? For sure, but he wasn't under siege. And the Canadiens have made the Jets feel like they've been under siege for a long, long time.
Okay. Let's. I'm going to move on to a somewhat similar topic because I thought this was an interesting take on this by Paul Maurice. He talked about the team, talked about these lineup changes that we're making, and he said we're still learning about our team. And part of me really likes that idea, that they're still digging around and trying to find all these different things, kind of trying to find as much information as you can about this team and lock it in before you head into the playoffs.
Sure.
I'm wondering though, at this stage of the year, is that really a good thing to still need to find this much up about your team? And I will introduce this idea to what we've talked about before, this constant changing of the lines because things aren't working and wanting to get to a different place. Is it such an idea to just be a good idea to be trying all of these different lines just for the sake of it? Or is Paul Maurice, in the end, searching for something out of this team that he has yet to find this season?
Well, this is simple for me, Sean, and this is a lot to do with Pierre-Luc Dubois. The circumstances are dictating the Jets need to learn other things. They need to learn what it's like to play without Blake Wheeler, who has been officially diagnosed with a concussion after that hit the other day from Brady Tkachuk. They also need to learn who Pierre-Luc Dubois fits best with. Right? That process is ongoing. We still don't know if Pierre-Luc Dubois is feeling 100%. So tonight he got a chance to play with a couple other people. One of them who he's played a lot with already, in Nikolai Ehlers, and another in Paul Stastny, who the Jets have been looking to get him together with. I thought that line was pretty good after they went together. We know that Mark Scheifele and Andrew Kopp have chemistry together. Kyle Connor, he's not on a hot streak, let's say. I mean, in terms of board play, there are a bunch of times that line got caught in their own end. There hasn't been a ton of generation in terms of offensive game, but that happens. Sometimes you get into streaky situations. But I mean, hey, Nikolai Ehlers had an unbelievable season for the Jets. He went 10 games without a goal. That happens. Dom, of course they tried to make Patrik Laine a defensive player. They didn't try to tell him to stop scoring. He needed to be better defensively along the boards. Everyone is being asked to do that. Kyle Connor is being asked to be better along the boards. It doesn't mean you forget how to shoot or you don't be an offensive player. Nobody's telling those players to be dump and chase players. They want them to be more responsible with the puck in the defensive zone and have cleaner exits. Every coach wants that. I mean, that's not... The Jets did a good job of rounding out Patrik Laine's game. I would still argue that Patrik Laine had his best season as a pro last year, even though he didn't score 44 goals.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Yeah.
That's got nothing to do. I mean, that's smart coaching. You're trying to...
he still put up 70 points, or sorry, how many points did he put up last year? Or he was on pace for a 70-point season or something like that? Yeah.
Just under a point a game. So, I mean,
yeah.
That's not again, the coaches didn't drill the offense out of Patrik Laine. The reason Laine's numbers were down is well documented. He only had 8 power play goals last year after he had 20 a couple years before. So his weapon got taken away by the opponents, and the Jets didn't utilize that weapon well enough. So anyway,
let's get back to here. I'm going to get us back onto that topic with this sentiment from Peter. It says, "Don't all teams switch up their lines when needed?" And I think that's the interesting part of this is Paul Maurice has been telling us that, like you said, that this line change is coming. So this isn't the same thing. This isn't, man, we needed to change up the lines. This is like a plan of going in different directions. But I wonder about that plan and the idea of constantly going to, is he expecting just this vast array of injuries, or do you really need to have 17, 18, 19 different line combinations in your back pocket to go into the playoffs with? Or should we be getting somewhere where we're finding guys who like really just click together and like leave those guys to build their chemistry and keep it going into the playoffs?
Sure, Sean. In a perfect world, yes. Would the Avalanche?
But what's so unperfect about this world? They haven't had to deal with injuries
Sean. It's
or
simple.
anything.
Yes, I told you this. We've been talking about this all year. The Jets haven't had those top 6 players going at the same time.
Yeah, there you go.
Nights.
That's the problem, and that's the problem.
Well, of course, but it's
is this not a problem right now?
It's because of the compressed season and the circumstances they're dealing with, is what I would say. Of course, they would want optimal performance from every player on every single night. But this is a problem around the league. It's not just a Jets problem. The Leafs have made tons of changes to their top 6. Right now, they're playing Alex Galchenyuk in the top 6. Right. He was claimed off waivers. So this is not a Jets problem. The Calgary Flames have changed their line combinations numerous times. They can't find one that works for them. So for me, again, I totally understand. Would the Jets like to have stability? Of course they would. But they haven't had enough nights where enough guys were going at the same time, which is part of the reason why they're still looking. And they need to be looking because they'll need more players going at the same time once the playoffs arrive. So I'm with you. Would it be easier for Paul Maurice to throw his hands up in the air and just say, hey, this is what we're going with, that's it? Sure, but that's not working either. So, I mean, we knew that this time was coming. There was too much of one thing, but when a line comes out and has a game like those guys had against Calgary, then you think, well, there you go. That line's going to be great, right? I mean, that line's going to score 2 or 3 every night, but that's just not the way that it works. I mean, even Colorado, they've had to split up Rantanen and McKinnon at times. It's not that they don't want to do it, but it helps keep things fresh. That happens at every level. Sometimes teams get flat. They get into, there's the fine line between knowing the tendencies and sort of just leaning on past success is a fine line. So sometimes you need to shake things up. I'm not saying the Jets want to be blending their lines all the time in the last 16 games. Not at all. But I think we're getting closer to where they want to land. And as you mentioned, I mean, if he wanted to land on Wheeler, Scheifele, and Connor, well, now that plan is going to be paused until Blake Wheeler is back. And secondarily, I don't think Blake Wheeler will be just tossed. I mean, maybe he will be tossed onto that line because it's a place of comfort for him. So that'll be interesting to watch.
I'm taking a lot of heat in the chat room here tonight.
You're just giving people what they want. People asked for the headband, now they got it. But now that we have 260 other people here, some people think that this is new. So we got to keep the people happy.
Well, I think one of the roles that we like to follow here is I play the devil's advocate. I think I'm playing it pretty hard tonight, and I think I'm getting a lot of hate in the comments for it. But hey, you know what? These are the dangers of the Kenny and Renny show, and I'm willing to take that on for the betterment of our show and the betterment of our audience. And I wanted to say, some people are talking about here they want to get into trade chat. We'll go there.
Here. I just
we'll go
there. This Rick McConnell, thank you for weighing in from Pilot Bound. Very good coach.
Oh, really?
There
Nice.
we go. Yeah. There we go. Rick.
It will happen in the playoffs as well. I mean, hey, and so we already brought up St. Louis as an example. St. Louis was not at all afraid to juggle the lines in that.
Did it often.
They did it like crazy.
One series, Oscar Sundqvist was on the first line. The next series, he's on the fourth line. I mean, and then their fourth line was playing against Patrice Bergeron and occasionally won the matchup, which was exceptional hockey for them. Nobody would have drawn that up and said, "Oh, wait, the Blues should play against Bergeron? Well, try their fourth line." Well, their fourth line was great in that series, so they need all of those lines going. Right now, they're not all clicking with perfect chemistry, but again, I think that that's a lot to do with certain players haven't played together, and certain players, when they have played together, haven't been clicking the same way that they've been clicking in the past. So then you get a spark from someone else. Someone else asked earlier, well, of course, I mean, Kopp leaving that line, it didn't hurt the third line because Pro came in and played well. And then by the time Kopp got put with Scheifele, then he helped that line. So, I mean, sure. I mean, there were some, certainly some negatives to the line changes, but they had no choice. They had to make some changes, and they did, and that's where it fell out.
All right, let's get into the line changes and how you felt about it. Let's start with Paul Maurice had said he really wanted to see the speed of Ehlers alongside Dubois and Stastny. What did you see from that line when that change was made?
Yeah, I mean, from the very beginning, Nikolai Ehlers was a player that I want that I was interested in seeing beside Pierre-Luc Dubois, like ever since the trade was made. I mean, Paul Maurice talked about what he had on his board. In my board, I wanted to see that speed of Ehlers with Dubois. And as I mentioned, I think again, because Stastny has started to play with Dubois, I think he'll start to look for a shot a little bit more. Dubois created that great opportunity like we talked about in the slot area. I do think it was, again, I think when he's feeling 100% comfortable, he buries that chance. So to me, I think Stastny has meshed well with Dubois. I know that you thought Wheeler was more of a driving force there, but because of Stastny's smarts, I think that he will click very well with Dubois. And I really think that Ehlers' speed will back off the opponents and create some trailer opportunities for Pierre-Luc Dubois. I also think that that sort of net drive component that Mason Appleton brings to the Lowry line, I think that that could happen with Ehlers and Dubois as well in terms of that. So there you go. Exactly. Just a little heat. Everyone likes the heat turned up.
I'll tell you this. This may be right here. I'm going to unveil it. This may be my favorite comment I've seen on our show so far. Renny looking like the bad guy in a non-action 80s movie. Like I'm the jerk guy in like Can't Buy Me Love or one of those shows where, I come in like, yeah, I like that. That's a good one. So the other change, how did you like, so the purpose of putting Connor back, or not Connor, Andrew Kopp back on the line with Connor and Mark Scheifele was to add a little defense there. So Paul Maurice's explanation, it was a little bit too much of the same thing with all those players on the same line. And I agree with that. I agree with that assessment. And I agree with, Andrew Kopp's the guy you want to bring in if you want to build that up. What did you see from that line after he moved there?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, there's no doubt that they were better. I mean, they weren't protected. They certainly weren't. They weren't under, giving up those grade A chances like that line had been earlier in the game. So I do think that there were some strides made on that line. I mean, I don't think it was their best for sure. I think that there's another level for them to reach together. And I think again, those two guys have been able to get each other going in the past. So I think it's a line that makes a lot of sense on a lot of levels. Like we talked about it earlier in the year. When Kopp played on Scheifele's left side early in the year, it helped him. We know that Scheifele's turned things around on the face-off front. Yeah. But having Kopp there Kopp is a perfect security blanket. But he's not just there as a security blanket. He can create some offense. And there's one other thing I'd like to say about Kopp's breakaway. I mean, for people who thinks he didn't make a good enough move on the breakaway, I would encourage you to watch the replay one more time. Joel Edmondson makes a veteran move. He slashes him on the left shin guard right as he was going to fake the shot and go to the wrist shot high blocker. So everyone's like, oh, well, he didn't sell the shot. That's not true at all. Anyone who's been on a breakaway and had their legs slashed right when they're trying to make a move, that makes a humongous impact. So for me, that wasn't a bad play by Kopp. He made a good play, but Edmondson made a veteran move. If he slashes him on the stick, it's probably a penalty shot. Instead, it's not even a penalty because he disguised the move well enough that he slashed him and just knocked his timing off for a split second.
This Corey Blashill, that's our camera guy. That's Gene Prince's camera guy out in Edmonton. Yeah. He's on the show every time, and he comes in and he says this. He's trying to sell us on this. The Oil and the Jets first round, buckle up. Hey, I agree. I mean, I think I'm not sure that anyone is catching Toronto. I think that's more likely at this stage that one of those two teams catches Toronto than Montreal catching either the Oilers or the Jets. So it sure looks like it's going to be that way. If it is, Corey, think about this. We should do some kind of, how the mayors of two cities do something? We should do something. The Edmonton crew versus the Winnipeg crew. We should have something at stake for this. So think about it, Corey, because they're coming. The Winnipeg Jets are coming, and you've been running your mouth, and it's going to come down in these playoffs. Eventually, someone's going to have to pay the piper. So we should figure out what that price is that's going to be paid. I wanted to
hang on one second.
Sure.
There, Pat says your audio is a bit hot. So
Oh, I'm coming in hot. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. You're not just firing
Pat,
me up now. You're
Pat,
firing everybody up.
tell me if that's better, Pat. I touched it a little bit, but
Hey, we should
and
also
here,
just
this.
say quickly. We have so many Manitoba hockey folks here online. Craft Hockeyville, get out and vote for St.
Oh,
Adolphe,
for
people.
sure.
They have, they're in the finalists there. We know they had a tough go with their rink, and they really need your support. So get out there and vote if you can here.
You know what? I was in Lumbee, British Columbia for Craft Hockeyville when
Nice.
they won. I got to hand out the trophy and all that kind of stuff. That was one of my top three favorite assignments in this job because just to see the joy of the community and be, like the mayor is trying to take you out for drinks afterwards, and the whole town just wants to, like everyone is celebrating, and I want to see that for Manitoba. So yes, get out, everybody, vote. It's going to be great. Let's get this done because I don't think Manitoba's had a winner before. We rarely, to be honest,
I don't think they've had a finalist.
Yeah, and they don't do I think the last couple of years it changed. I don't think they do a finals. They do the final four and then they just pick one. It used to get down to the final two. Anyways, get out, vote, and do it often because we deserve it here in Manitoba. It's been a long time. I want to go to the offense that the Jets were able to generate from the point tonight. Why do you think that they did so well at that?
Yeah, I mean, they've been trying to get a little bit more involved. One thing that I've been seeing on social media a lot, I mean, the Jets aren't an offensively, they're not known for being overly offensive on the back end, but they've had a few more rush chances. I mean, Morrissey's goal is a direct, example of rush chances. I think, again, we also have to remember, yes, the Jets have a go-go offense, and yes, would they generate more offense if that defenseman was more active? And, we've seen it a little bit more from Tucker Poolman. But let's also not forget, when you're active, you're also more apt to give up odd man rushes, right? That has been a big problem for the Jets. So it's hard to have one without sacrificing part of the other. So for me, like I said, did the Jets want to give up that many shots? No. But the highest danger chances were 9-8. So it's just a matter of you have to be cognizant of both things. Join when you can, join when there's a third forward high, but you can't do it all the time, or else you know what's going to happen. You're going to be giving up odd man rushes, and now we're going to be having the conversation, well, who cares if the Jets are more active offensively? They're back to giving up too many high danger chances. So there's a fine line to be found there. But yes, can they be more active? Yes. Neil Pionk has been more active. Josh Morrissey's been more active. Tucker Poolman's been more active. So, I mean, let's see how it goes. That fine line between overly aggressive and just right, again, there's a sweet spot there. The Jets are searching for it. Can they find it in these last 16 games? Let's see.
Ken, I got to bring this up because this is what dudes do to compliment each other. But it's twice now someone in the chat has asked if you've been hitting the weights. You've been pumping iron, bro?
No, it's not been pumping iron. Much to the chagrin of many, it's mostly I've been having high volume walking has been the key to my weight loss. I get 20,000 steps a day, but
if you were on our pregame show, we did our Instagram pregame show, and all of a sudden Ken stood up and started walking back and forth around the room. I was getting dizzy. I was like, "What's going on?" I thought he'd needed to go plug in a power cord or something like that. And I said, "Are you getting your steps in right now?" And sure enough, there we go. Kenny's getting his steps in.
Rob Hawley has pointed out Winkler was an early winner of Craft Hockeyville, so our apologies there.
What's that?
Someone said Winkler had won the Craft Hockeyville early on in the stage.
Okay.
So, I mean, hey, I played junior hockey with the Mighty Flyers, so I should have known that. So my apologies there.
Yeah, that's your
Space
neck
Explorer,
of the woods.
my audio shouldn't be low. But maybe crank your audio up a little bit, maybe. But I think
or maybe it's that I'm too loud and people are turning it down because my loud mouth is going off here. Hey, I like this. I can't find the specific. I don't know if it was Dieter Steidinger who said this earlier.
Yeah.
But someone made the point, and I like this point because we've talked so much about PLD and him being so great defensively. And someone pointed out earlier, if PLD is the guy that we keep talking about him being, the guy we want out there defensively, why are we not putting him out at the end of the game when we're trying to protect that one goal lead with the extra attacker out? It's a
Yeah, I
great
mean,
question.
it is a fair
Great
question
question.
for sure. I think it would fall into that comfort level. I mean, I do think that that's a role that, I mean, Paul Maurice said it flat out this morning when he was asked about Dubois, that he sees him being the kind of guy that can excel in that role.
There we go.
But for me, I think it was, Ty, it's a great question. I think this is just a
Great
matter of
question, Ty.
getting comfort level with him. Yes, we know that Pierre-Luc Dubois is probably, I mean, certainly he's more physically imposing than Mark Scheifele, and probably a little bit more diligent in terms of the defensive play. But historically, Paul Maurice has played Scheifele against the other team's best and is comfortable with him in that role. So that's why he was there. I would also point out, for all the people that say it's only that line that goes out first, actually Maurice had Trevor Lewis, Nate Thompson, and Adam Lowry out for the first protection of the goal once the extra attacker was on. So I think we have seen some changes being made. But yes, I do think that Dubois will get into that rotation sooner than later.
Look at this. Look at this by Troy Stevens. If Jets win, Corey has to put a Winnipeg City of Champions sign on the perimeter highway. That would make a great episode of Kenny and Renny. I hope you're still here listening to this, Corey, because you, my friend, have probably bit up more than you could chew, I think, is what's happening here. We've got great ideas coming out of the chat group here. We know because we're the butt of their jokes half the time, and so they're witty. They're really witty. So let's go to Hellebuyck. Another game out of him tonight. I like that idea of it's another example of a fluky goal that he gets scored on this year. And then what does he do right after he lets in a fluky goal? And it's become pretty darn consistent.
Yeah, I mean, impressive. And you have to appreciate the mentality of Hellebuyck when he was asked about the bad break. Sometimes you just feel like it's inevitable. I mean, he's basically, again, bringing humor into something that absolutely ticks him off to no end. But here's the thing.
Yeah.
He doesn't let it bother him during the game. He's ticked off about it afterward. But during the game, what does he do? Just puts up a brick wall, basically, which, again, that for me is the part too, Sean. Once the game got to 3-2, and then the Jets had the potential to be under siege, they weren't sitting back on their heels nearly as much. So, and a lot of that is the confidence they have in Connor Hellebuyck, that he isn't going to be worried. Now, TS, I'm sorry, that is not a play on Hellebuyck. I know a lot of people were on that for today. So that's not Hellebuck's fault. That is clearly a structural issue. The goalie's job, he's supposed to go back there and knock that puck down and get it down for the defenseman in order to help, break up a potential forechecking situation. I mean, is it safer for him to be in the net? Sure. But if he's not back there to try to knock it down, that puck gets rimmed around, and now it creates a chaotic situation for the defensive play. This wasn't a Connor Hellebuyck mishandle, and there have been some of those before. We know that. This is not on him at all for me.
I mean, in TS's defense, Hellebuyck has earned himself a reputation for being a guy who's adventurous. Yeah. He has been. I'm just saying, I agree with you 1,000%. I think that you can't blame that on him. That's what he's supposed to be doing. That's what goalies in the NHL do now. It allows them to relieve pressure and gain control of the puck. TS, I mean, I get the idea. A lot of people will say this, and there's been times in the past where Connor Hellebuyck has earned that distinction.
I'm not trying to be negative towards TS. Plenty of people.
I know.
On my timeline, I'm just, again, we saw this. We talked about that Dallas St. Louis series. Ben Bishop's puck handling ability was one of the reasons why Dallas was able to go 7 with St. Louis, because he helped deter the Blues' ferocious forecheck with his ability to get behind the net, knock pucks down, and kind of act as that third defenseman. The Jets aren't asking Hellebuyck to do that, but he did make a couple of smart plays behind the net to go goalie to D, to set up, to prevent some chaotic situations as well.
Hey, how about this idea? I like this from Corey. Corey's stirring the pot as hard as he can here to think that people are going to walk away from this game and entirely forget that they played the Montreal Canadiens, and it's all going to be about the Oilers. But his idea is that the Helly, not hello, I know what he's trying to say. Helly is scared of the oil. What do you think
Yeah,
about
no.
that? What do you? I
Zero,
mean, I don't
zero
think that
chance.
Hellebuyck is afraid of anyone, but if there's
Zero,
a
zero,
team that is
zero chance.
potentially in
No,
his head,
no, no, sir. No, no, no bingo on that.
and why
No,
not?
because he wants to show the hockey world that he could be the guy to shut down Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. There's no doubt in my mind. Much like Connor Hellebuyck would welcome the next opportunity to play the Vegas Golden Knights. Dave, totally fine. Hellebuyck's stick handling is not his strength, but he's been working on it and made some smart plays since a couple of those early fumbles. I'll tell you this right now, Sean. Connor Hellebuyck cannot wait for an opportunity to go head to head with Marc-Andre Fleury again. He's upset about the way the last one ended, and he wants to prove that he can be the best. He proved he was the best goalie in the NHL last year during the regular season. The next thing for him to prove is to be a Conn Smythe Trophy winner and go head to head with a couple of goalies that are high profile guys and dispose of them and be better than them and lead his team as far as he can possibly lead them.
You know what? I wanted to bring this up because videos of Reddit is trying to burn me here. He says Edmonton has the depth of a hockey team that has Sean at top line center, but I think he just inadvertently called me Connor McDavid. they've got like the two top centers. They've got two Hart Trophy winning centers in their first and second line position. And videos of Reddit is saying that team is like having Sean at top line center. I will take it.
That's
videos
a compliment.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I knew I liked videos of Reddit. I love them hopping into the show. Let's go back to that.
One other thing too. One other thing about that series. This is vintage Manitoba flavor, Sean. I think that the fan bases would be more worried about that matchup because of the long, tortured history of the 80s Oilers and the memories that those series bring back for them. So it's natural to think, oh, well, remember what happened when it was Gretzky and Messier and company. So I totally get it. I think that would be an absolutely tremendous first round matchup. And again, I'll be happy about any playoff matchup that we're watching, Sean, around the NHL. But I think that Jets Oilers would be absolutely phenomenal. I think it would be high energy hockey, and it would be just fantastic to watch what we talked about all year long. Can the Jets find a way to keep those two superstars under wraps for longer than 55 minutes at a time? Because they've had trouble doing it. They've had long stretches where they've been okay against them, but they haven't been able to prevent them from being game breakers. And that's what they would need to do in a series like that. And as we've talked about on many of our different platforms, all four of the teams currently in a playoff spot have playoff demons that they will have to try and overcome.
Yeah.
So for me,
that's such an interesting angle. We talked about it last.
Everyone's saying it's only the Jets. Get real. The Leafs.
Who's saying that?
Pressure. Oh, I don't know. I'm just saying.
Scotty had the idea last time that Scott. Okay, let's do this. Let's rank this because Scotty was saying he thinks it's all on the Leafs. He thinks everything's on the Leafs. They haven't won since '67. They haven't been out of the first round since 2006 or something like that. So 2004. Scott Billick, who joined us for the last show, thinks that all the pressure is on the Leafs. I don't agree with that. I think you're right. I think each of these teams has pressure built in with them. Yeah. But let's do a ranking. Let's do a ranking of 1 through 4, Jets, Oilers, Canadiens, and Leafs. Which teams have the most pressure to get out of the first round on them? Rank them.
Yeah, Toronto, Edmonton, Winnipeg, Montreal for me.
You put Edmonton ahead of Winnipeg?
Yes, they have had almost no playoff success with McDavid and Draisaitl, who have been Hart Trophy winners. So I'm not saying they're ahead of them in terms of their window being open or whatever else. I'm just saying that when a team has two superstars, most of those teams have found a way to get things done when it matters most. And I'm not saying it's their fault. It's not. But they're part of the deal, and they need to be part of the solution for when the Oilers are able to get some sustained playoff success. Obviously, they need better goaltending. Goaltending let them down last year against Chicago. And Jonathan Toews had a ridiculous series, and the best center on the ice in that series didn't play for the Oilers. I was there. I saw it with my own eyes.
Jonathan Toews.
There's no dispute. Yeah. Toews was the best center in that series. So there's pressure on those two players to elevate their level. Same as there's pressure on Austin Matthews. And this isn't about Matthews trying to stay in the conversation with Connor McDavid. This is about Matthews having his authoring authoritative moment of a playoff, putting his stamp down and saying, hey, get on my back, we're moving on. That needs to happen for the Leafs. And in terms of Montreal, hey, let's not kid ourselves. Montreal has not won the Stanley Cup since 1993. There's pressure in that market. It doesn't matter that they would have missed the playoffs in a normal year and they took a nice step by winning the series against the Pittsburgh Penguins and pushing the Philadelphia Flyers. I think has pressure to win.
Well, I was going to say, if there's a team that is going to, if someone is going to get fired in one of those organizations for not making it past the first round of the playoffs, I'd say it's most likely Marc Bergevin. Out of anyone involved, you and I agree on this. We don't see anything happening if the Jets went out in 4 straight games in the first round of the playoffs, I don't see anything happening to Kevin Cheveldayoff. I don't see anything happening to Paul Maurice. I don't expect any changes. And we talked with Speck out of Edmonton. He doesn't expect any kind of moves with Tippett there either. To get to the rankings, I agree with your Toronto. I actually flip-flop Winnipeg and Edmonton, though. And just because...
Which is totally I would say, I understand that, for sure.
If you're the Oilers, I think you can still kind of fall back on the excuse that, one, their GM has come in and is trying to handle a team that they were handcuffed by salaries, and he's trying to make wriggle room and make the right moves, but he's doing it slowly. They're not doing it in grand, one fell swoop or anything like that. But I don't think there's anyone out there who looks at the Oilers roster and thinks that roster is a better playoff roster than the Winnipeg Jets. Like, we've talked about this. You've got the best goalie in the country, and you've got maybe the best depth forward-wise in the entire league. I know people, maybe they're going to address things, and we should get into the trade talk soon because people are wanting it, and we'll get there. But I take a look at this Winnipeg Jets team, and I do think that there's pressure. I think the fans feel pressure. I think the players feel pressure, despite the fact that I don't think there's going to be any changes if they don't go anywhere. This is a team that if they lose out in the first round, their record goes from being 2018 looking like they're going to be the Stanley Cup champs to that offseason looking like the team that most people around the league thought was going to be, if there's a dynasty coming up in the league, it was looking like the Winnipeg Jets, to losing out in the first round and then losing out in the play-in round the year after that. If we're talking out of the last 4 years that the Winnipeg Jets, the last 3 years that the Winnipeg Jets don't make it out of the first round of the playoffs, that's underachieving. And it's underachieving totally strong.
No, I totally agree with that. That was, bang on.
I've been ignoring people's.
None of those teams have had the overhaul in the back end, and none of those teams lost to someone with the impact of Dustin Byfuglien.
Right.
But having said that, you can't ignore it. I mean, this team thought they were on the verge of a sustained run, and if it goes to 3 early exits, that would be a massive disappointment for the organization and for their fan base. I think that's got to be clear. There's no doubt about that.
I'm just going to say this quick because Corey's asking. We talked a little bit about the Oilers and Jets. He said, what line would you put up against Connor and Leon? It's Adam Lowry's line. We know that already, that we know we're heading in that direction. The Jets aren't going to go skill for skill against that line. They're going to throw out Adam Lowry in the belief that they not only could potentially shut that line down, but potentially even outscore them. I don't know that I see that happening against that line. But they did they not outscore Austin Matthews' line in the last game they played against them? Did they not come out with a positive goal differential? So, I you know me, I'm a believer that Connor McDavid is here and everyone else is down there. I don't put Austin Matthews right beside Connor McDavid like other people do, like you'll hear people saying. But Adam Lowry is going to be the guy who's going to take on those kind of assignments and try and make those players' lives hell and then free everyone else up to go and do something with it. And I will say this to Corey as well, from what I know of covering that team a little bit here and again, I don't think that Dave Tippett will ice a team that has Connor and Leon on the same line throughout the series. We've had conversations with him in the past that the Oilers aren't going anywhere until they can have those two playing on separate lines and driving 2 separate lines. Now it works, and Ken and I have talked in this space about that. They kind of fuse those guys together so they get almost like 2.5 lines out of those guys, and it works really well to do it. I'm not discounting it, but if they threw Connor and Leon together on one line for the entirety of that series, I think that, even if those guys came out on top, I think that team is losing that depth battle throughout that series. Okay, let's get to trade talk. Why don't you give the latest?
Let's go right here. Sorry. Better defensively, this is easy for me. It's Matthews. It's Matthews, and I think by a considerable margin. We saw it in the game yesterday. Matthews on the Hyman goal. The play starts with a defensive play behind the goal line. Matthews gets the puck back, carries it up ice, and goes to the net, makes a really smart play with Marner, a nice interchange. Intentional backhand off the pads, Hyman rebound goal. His back pressure this year has been just exceptional. That is one area where Connor McDavid needs to improve. Same goes for Leon Draisaitl. And once those players get that same level of buy-in that the Leafs are getting this year in their defensive play, that's when the Oilers will be especially dangerous. They're making steps on those fronts, but they still need to make another step forward.
Let's get into, because we're getting closer and closer, and you and I are going to be at the arena on Monday. Jets are going to be out of town.
This is fantastic. Lindsay, that is just absolutely fantastic right there. That is fantastic. Thank you for joining us, and that's tremendous stuff.
So for our Winnipeg audience, they may remember Lindsay Warner from, she was the late night news host for a while at CTV. And I remember her as being very professional until this moment right now, until she popped in here and is dropping bombs like that. I don't know. Yeah. This is, I feel like I'm starting to turn into a little bit of a punchline tonight. I don't know about you. I don't know if you're feeling it, but it's kind of feels like it's sneaking up on me.
Well, yes. Well, maybe Lindsay might also be in my camp here. We had those earlier camps. There was a little bit of a split happening. Team Kenny, Team Renny.
That's right. I
don't know. We'll have.
That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to fracture the audience, create the tension.
No. I am a connection creator. I'm a connection creator. I am not a fractured society. No.
If you tell me to wake up like you do when that's Kenny's swear word. If you say wake up, Renny, then there's trouble. That's when you know things are really bad in Kenny and Renny land. People dying to know with the show coming up, and we wanted to touch on it. We're gonna try and find. We're going to try and find a way to do some live Kenny and Renny stuff on that day. We, of course, we got to go on TV. We got to do stuff. But we're going to try and find some time for people to jump in and interact with us just like this. It's going to be lots of fun. We're looking forward to it. But Ken, the way things are going, seems like things are starting to move in the market. Where do you think the market's at for the Jets at this moment, especially when you're starting to see teams like Florida making overtures to make some space and, having lost their top defenseman, could have some needs. Montreal, potentially some needs. A lot of teams that are suddenly vying for the same thing the Jets are. Where are the Jets at with that?
Yeah, super interesting, Sean. I mean, I think the Jets are definitely still interested. I think they're waiting for the prices to go down. I think, too, Elliot Friedman has mentioned the Tampa Bay Lightning as a potential opportunity or landing spot for David Savard. I saw some suggestions today that the Florida Panthers, they make a lot of sense. Bill Zito, very familiar with David Savard from his time in Columbus. First-time general manager, probably wants to make a big move with Aaron Ekblad sidelined. I wouldn't be surprised about those at all. I do think that it's not a flip-flop, but it's a matter of, it seems as though the market is changing. I thought for a while that it would be, make more sense. You got to go up. If it was Ekholm, you get someone with term. Now if it wasn't going to be that way, well, then you just get a pending UFA that you maybe try to sign him the way the Jets did with Drew Stafford in that 2015 deal. Now I'm back more on the Josh Manson, Vince Dunn train in terms of having someone with term. Obviously, the big difference in terms of contract, Vince Dunn is he's an RFA with, I think he's making 1.85 or somewhere around there, whereas Josh Manson would be another year at 4.1 million. We know he has a no movement clause, modified clause, so he probably would have to waive. Most of the Canadian teams are on there. We don't know that for certain, but we'll have to see. those two guys are on my list, but again, this is a thing for me. I don't have a great. Those two guys make a lot of sense, but to me, it's going to be an under the radar person, and we'll continue to pursue who those options could be. But to me, it's going to be a team that drops out of the race. They have a bad weekend, and suddenly they decide to sell. Colin Miller, to me, Colin Miller is a nice complementary piece. Colin Miller is not playing on the Jets' top pairing, and to me, he would be someone that the Jets would look at as a secondary piece. And for me, you can't bring in another guy with $3 million or whatever it is as a secondary piece. To me, they'd be looking, if they're looking for top four depth, Colin Miller is not that. But he's a nice player. He's probably going to help somebody.
You're sold on the idea of getting a guy though who's got term.
I'm not completely sold, but that is the way I think the Jets are leaning. That's not to say they won't. Again, I could see them adding a Mike Riley as a depth piece, but if they're getting a top four piece, I think they want a player with term. But what complicates that matters. I know Dieter is asking about Travis Sanheim. Well, of course they'd be interested, but what's the
Oh my God!
I think for me, the price tag for Travis Sanheim is a roster player, and the Jets don't want to. They're looking at adding someone for futures. They're not looking at adding someone and taking someone out of the roster. I think anybody that's acquired will have to be from the LTIR pool of money. I would expect the Jets will move Nathan Beaulieu to LTIR, and that would free up another $1.2 million, I believe. I think the previous number was somewhere around 3.5, so they could technically add, if I have this correct, would be around $4.7 million. So we'll see. And hey, lots of people are asking, which D sits after the trade? Well, I mean, we'll see. We don't know that answer yet. It depends on what level of defenseman is coming in, depends on what hand that person shoots. The most logical candidates would be Logan Stanley because of his relative inexperience. And on the right side, it's not going to be Pionk, and I don't expect it to be DeMello. But at the same time, Tucker Pullman's playing 20 to 25 minutes a game. I think there have been some improvements in his game. I think it's clear that his energy level is certainly on the rise after dealing with COVID, which would have been tough. So again, we'll see. But right now, Logan Stanley's made some strides in his game. Yes, I think he made an overcommitment on the first goal. We've talked about this. I wouldn't rule out Heinola either. So,
isn't it too late for this though? No, if we're heading into the playoffs, I'm not. No, but isn't it too late? The idea. The suggestion there is not that he gets in and he plays some. The suggestion by Troy Stevens is that he stays in the lineup and we don't go and pick up someone else from another market. You don't make a trade because you take Villy and you let him run. Isn't it too late? There's not enough runway left to bring him in and be that guy. I know that Cheveldayoff had said that before when we'd asked him about the potential for picking up guys, and he said, we've got guys in the system who could maybe step in, and maybe he wasn't even talking about these guys. Maybe he was more along the lines of talking about Logan Stanley.
Yeah.
But the idea that you would take Ville Heinola and put him in that situation at this stage, haven't we run out of runway for that?
There's a quarter of the season left, essentially 16 games out of a 56 game schedule.
There's a quarter of the season, but if in a real season we're right down the stretch, right?
Sure, I totally understand.
You can say it's a quarter of the season. It's a different kind of season, though.
Here's the other thing, though. Ville Heinola has still had played more games than anybody in the Jets organization. He's played some. I went and added it up. He's in the 40s with his games in Liga, with his games at the World Junior, with his one game with the Jets, and with his games at the Moose. I think he's played the most games of anybody else. Would it be optimal? And I think if the plan was to have him in the playoff lineup, he probably would have played a little bit earlier. But it's never too late for that matter. And you never know. The Jets have had this incredible run of health. It could easily be a scenario where the Jets get to number 6 or 8 on the depth chart. There you go. We'll see how it goes. Again, I expect him to get some more games in here recently in the near future. Obviously, we know he's on the road trip, so I don't think it will be with the Moose right now until after this trip. But the next couple days will determine a lot of this. And again, Ville Heinola has made some great strides this season. We had Pascal Vincent on. If folks here didn't hear it, go to the Renny show page. He has a great explanation in terms of how he was handled, why he's been handled this way. and what it will mean for him moving forward. Again, every young player wants to play right away. There's no doubt about that. But there's a lot of people that would not have given Logan Stanley any chance to be in the game one playoff lineup. And we're not here saying that he is, but he's worked himself in the conversation to be in that discussion. And it's not too late for Ville Heinola either. He's on the depth chart. He's a valued piece of this organization. That's not to say he'll be rushed in. And here's the other part, Sean. I know a lot of people think that they should just, if they insert Heinola, it should be with Josh Morrissey on the top pairing. If Heinola is inserted into this lineup, it will be on the third pairing in a secondary role with probably a guy like Dylan DeMello or Tucker Poolman, depending on who is brought in. So we'll see what happens.
Kenny, I was wondering about the idea if the Jets are potentially going big game hunting, and I think both you and I know your feelings are you're a little more
depends on the price, I guess. Sorry.
Yeah, but I wonder, what do you think about the idea of and the potential for Chevy to potentially try and move money out in that deal to fit something big? Like if you're talking about having long term, I know there's going to be cost. There's going to be savings made this summer with contracts expiring, but there's still the issues of re-signing Pionk and trying to re-sign Lowry and trying to re-sign or give an extension to Kopp. So you've got a real good beat on the amount of money that they're going to free up, but where that money is going to go from that point. Do you see any kind of potential for the Jets to move money out in an effort to bring in a big player? That I think people are onto something here, that Chevy is more likely, I think, than the majority of GMs to bring in someone that no one was expecting. But if he can bring in someone with term and solve a problem that they've been trying to solve for a long time, are there spots in this roster that they can move money out that would make sense?
Well, the big thing, Sean, and the person that most people thought the moving money out would be was Matthew Perreault going into this year because of the money. 4.125 for being a fourth line player. Well, Matthew Perreault is the Jets' Swiss Army knife, playing on the third or fourth line and on the power play. So to me, I don't see Matthew Perreault moving out in terms of, trying to free up some cash, because that they value his contribution. So I'm not saying it's not possible, but I would say it's highly unlikely. So again, could they move somebody else? For sure, but I don't know. It would be tough to bring in a big money guy. And then that's the other part. The expansion draft is a factor for the Winnipeg Jets. And I mean, again, it won't deter them, but it's something that they have to have under consideration.
Kenny, do you have an answer to this?
Playoff games do count, yes. The Flames encountered this with Sean Monahan, so it would be 7 total, including the playoffs. So good question.
On D for
Josh
PP.
Morrissey's going nowhere, Albin.
Yeah.
Morrissey's game has been improving also, I should say. I know that folks were pretty hard on him during the course of this year at certain points, and we know there had been some up and down moments for sure where he wasn't playing quite at that level, but I think that Morrissey's shown some real improvement, and we knew he would continue to work on it and will continue to do so.
I wanted to talk to you about the power play tonight and your thoughts on Mason Appleton going into Wheeler's spot. I mean, clearly to me, it became about, when Wheeler was there, it was about playing catch between Scheifele and Wheeler, kind of condensing the defense down, then moving it up top and trying to get over, or if the defense isn't collapsing, that leaves it open for Stastny in that spot. It seemed fairly clear to me that they were using Appleton as a decoy. Like, they threw it down to him a couple times, but I think basically the idea was the threat that they could send the puck to him there, but it was mostly, seemingly to me, a way of getting Scheifele to work it around up top and then have Appleton just crash the net.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue that the Jets' power play runs from those 3 slots either already, right? Kyle Connor, one-timer, Morrissey from the top. Yes, Wheeler gets more touches than Mason Appleton would, but Wheeler, even though he's still a very good puck distributor, has been used more as the net front presence with that unit as well. I didn't mind what they didn't really generate a ton of grade A chances. I would say that's probably fair to say. But I know some people suggested on my timeline, well, put Lowry there. Adam's done the job before. He could do the job, but I don't think they would be using I mean, I think we've talked about this, Sean. I think then Lowry goes into the slot spot and Stastny. The other part that the Jets used a little bit more than what they had been using previously, they got more touches for Paul Stastny in that high slot position in order to distribute the puck sideways. So there weren't a lot of seam plays open or available. I think the Canadiens did a great job of preventing those kind of like Mark Scheifele looked for cross ice passes for Kyle Connor. Kyle Connor was doing the same thing. You didn't see as many of those high slot tips that we'd been seeing from Stastny at times. So again, it's one game. I totally understand. We've talked about this before. The Jets fans would like their power play to operate at 100% efficiency rating. That's just not possible. So they're operating at 1 out of every 4, which is exceptional at the NHL level.
Oh yeah.
Can they improve? Of course, and they will look to improve. But if you're Paul Maurice, I don't think you look to abandon it after one game. I mean, we saw in practice, Matthew Perreault is also under consideration for that job, so I think that he would be considered as well. One thing I should mention, I mean, someone had talked about Cole Perfetti. Cole Perfetti definitely could come into the NHL as a left winger.
Oh yeah.
I have a hard time believing that Perfetti will be ready for the NHL next season, and that's not a knock on Perfetti. I think he projects to be an excellent NHLer. Yeah. Because of the limited number of games he will play, even though he's going to have great benefit from playing in the American League as a guy who turned 19 on January 1st. That's a big bonus section for him. But I don't think it's enough games for him to be ready and to get ready, because the season is going to be basically not short. The offseason will be shortened. So for him to be able to get ready to sustain the rigors of an 82-game season at the NHL level at 19, I think is an awfully big ask. It's not impossible, but I don't think people should be penciling in Cole Perfetti on the Jets roster next year. I think Cole Perfetti will do everything in his power to be ready and to make that decision tough, maybe to even get a few games in. But for him to be there for the year would take an absolutely exceptional offseason and, depending on what happens with the rest of the roster. But I do think that he could break in as a winger. And I mean, who knows? It's too early to tell if he's going to be a center or a winger. Having the ability to do both is a huge club in his bag, much like it is for Andrew Kopp, as we've seen for him.
Well, I mean, to the idea of him being a center, if they're able to extend Lowry, I mean, there's no space for him as a centerman. I mean, if you've got Mark Scheifele for the next 3 years after this, and you've got Pierre-Luc Dubois for the next 3 years, and Adam Lowry for the next however many years you get him in there, there's no space to put a guy in at center. He's going to have to come in as a winger.
Chuckles, the Jets are 3rd in the NHL. The Maple Leafs had one of the best power plays this year. They just went 0 for 28, and they have Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner. So, yes, there's always room for improvement, but the Jets' power play is pretty low on their level of concerns.
How about this one? Josh Morrissey has been one of those players like Patrick Laine was at times, and Nick Ehlers, where they're not afraid to be critical of their own game and tell you that they're not where they want to be. He's been self-critical. But do you agree with this statement by Allergic to Snow, who says Morrissey has started to step up lately? Because I do.
Yeah, no, I was mentioning that a little bit earlier for sure. I mean, I think that Josh's level has been on the rise for sure. I think he's a guy who takes a lot of pride in his game, and he wouldn't have been happy with how a good chunk of the season has gone, but he's not one to get down on himself. He's one to work hard and try to work his way through it. I think he's done a nice job on the power play. I know a lot of people have been talking about Kyle Connor and whether the pass gets. I mean, Josh Morrissey, Kyle Connor is first on the Jets in power play goals with 8, and the guy getting him the puck a lot of those times is Josh Morrissey. So, I mean, in terms of, I think one thing that we've seen, Sean, Josh Morrissey needed some stability in his life on the back end in terms of the revolving door of partners. I think that Tucker Poolman has elevated his game to a certain degree as well. I do think that Morrissey is settled in for sure. He's making very wise, quick puck decisions, and I think he's been, doing a better job in defending. And he has a lot of tough assignments when it comes to defending. But I also saw, a couple of the analytics would also support that Josh Morrissey has improved as well. So,
Videos of Reddit has officially rebranded. Enter Sean's headband. That's a great picture. Love that. Kenny, anything else you want to touch on? Because otherwise I'm shutting us down.
Just one quick one from John here. For sure, we've talked about this as well. I know somebody asked me about it today too. What about Ehlers down low? Well, it's not a prime. Nikolai Ehlers needs to be in a shooting position. So being down low below the hash mark where Wheeler is, and then having to be the net front guy doesn't really suit his game. And Mark Scheifele is not going to be moved out of the spot that Nikolai Ehlers excels in. No, they don't play that spot the same way. Ehlers is more of an up-top reload shooter, whereas Mark Scheifele is the distributor off the half wall. But we've talked about this before. I could see Ehlers being in the slot maybe where Stastny is, but I don't see a fit down low. And that's not to say that Ehlers couldn't do it, but it's not his best quality. Could the Jets use his zone entries? Of course. But I think that Ehlers is in a good position because he is a relied upon shooter on that second unit, which has been getting a fair amount of ice time. There had been a bit of a slip there where the top unit had stayed on a little bit long a few times recently. But for the most part, they're still doing a pretty good job. And let's also remember that even as great as the second unit has been, it's 12 goals for them, I believe 18 for the top unit. So all the suggestions at the top of the unit is not getting the job done. They've gotten the job done plenty. Both units can improve. There's no doubt about that.
We talked about the idea a while back on our Instagram pre-games of flipping out Kyle Connor for Nick Ehlers. I'm wondering, because I know he likes to play where Scheifele plays, but he's that same hand, so his one-timer would work, and I'm impressed by his one-timer. I wonder what that curling ability, that dynamic nature that you say that he brings to that power play, I wonder what that would do and the potential for opening up cross ice passes to Scheifele to get him using his one-timer from that other side and maybe make it a little bit more dynamic because of that movement that he's able to use to potentially open up some passing lanes.
Yeah, I mean, certainly might be something that gets tested out at some point, Sean, but I think I would also say too, it's harder to make that cross. So as a left-handed shooter, it helps for the one-timer, but in terms of his body positioning to get that pass across to Scheifele, it's much easier to get the shot off on the reload on his strong side than it would be on his weak side. His shooting ability, you'll have a good shooting angle, but the passing, it's tough. It's tough because it's hard to go cross ice on your, essentially what would be his backhand. So we'll see what happens. I don't think it's a perfect fit. It's something that would be worth checking out. But again, I mean, Connor's getting the job done, and he also, the other advantage he has is in terms of the retrievals around the net and in the corners. So
if I remember this correctly, AJ Broderick is a good barometer for when we should shut down or Al Broderick is a good barometer for when we should shut down the show. And we got to shut it down, Kenny, because we've got our great podcast tomorrow. Everyone should come join us 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. We're going to do our weekly podcast with Emily Kaplan from ESPN, who does just phenomenal work with them. And Cassie Campbell, two-time gold medalist at the Olympics, is going to be joining us. We're looking forward to this one. It's going to be a good one. So come join us at 9. It'll be right where you're watching us now, either on my Facebook account, Ken's Twitter account, or on our YouTube account, which is the best place to follow us. If you're watching on there and you haven't subscribed, get on it, do that. It'll give you a heads up every time we're going live, and you're going to want a notification because we're not going to be able to give you specific times when we go live on trade deadline day. We're just going to be popping on here or there whenever we can kind of find it. So if you subscribe, you're going to be able to get notifications on when we're going to be on, because we'd love to spend some time with you on that day. There's usually some time to kill, and we'd love to kill it with you. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Hope you enjoyed the game tonight. Hope you enjoyed the post-game show. And we will see you next time.